Hello, and welcome to the Unofficial Official Story. I'm Jennifer, the fearless investigator.
What's up? I'm Koji, the so-called chief of the show.
And hello, listeners. I'm Dwayne, the class clown.
This is a podcast where we tell you the official story. We're going to take a look at the paranormal, conspiracies, unexplained phenomena, cryptids, and even true crime.
In this episode, we're asking the question, were Betty and Barney Hill abducted by aliens?
And by the end, we'll tell you what really maybe happened.
But first, we have a guest, Rosie Tran. Rosie Tran is a stand-up comedian, writer, podcast personality, and actress who has toured internationally at comedy clubs, colleges, and overseas for the USO in Europe and the Middle East.
Welcome. So glad you're here. Rosie, what have you been up to?
So I'm really excited to get out of pandemic. I'm glad that comedy's opening up. I'm going to be headlining a show at the Comedy House in New Orleans in mid-July. But if you guys want to check me out, I have a couple awesome podcasts. I have a podcast called Out of the Box, where I interview out of the box thinkers from political, religious, whatever, entertainment, adult film stars, Nobel Peace Prize nominees, like anyone that's not mainstream. And then I also have an awesome podcast called Rosie and BJ Save the World, where we talk about politics from different ends of the spectrum. And then finally, I have a podcast that is a sex education podcast with adult film star Tommy Pistol. We don't do any nudity, but we talk about all the taboo stuff with sex education. So it's actually an educational podcast. And all those are on YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you find your podcast.
That's pretty dope. Tommy Pistol. I'm not familiar with his work.
Tommy Pistol is an adult film star. He actually hosted the Showtime Adult Film Awards, and he has a comedy background, believe it or not. He's very entertaining. And so we decided to start a podcast talking about sex education because I grew up in a very conservative background. I didn't know anything. I was very innocent. So we take two opposite ends of the spectrum, a totally innocent person and then someone from the adult film industry. And he teaches me a lot.
Like learning how to drive from a NASCAR driver. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But it's definitely very interesting. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know about.
Like what? Tell us one lesson you've learned from your sex education podcast.
I learned about just so many things. About the fan mail that he gets, people messaging him about advice. A lot of people apparently message him for relationship advice. And he's like, hey, I'm not a couples counselor. So just some of the crazy stories and things that he has, I guess, encountered in the entertainment industry. We also have entertainment industry guests, some in the adult film world, some in the regular world, I guess non-adult film world. So definitely interviewing some interesting people as well. And we had a write-up in Hustler magazine, so it's pretty cool.
Oh, cool. I might get on DuckDuckGo and look him up.
So doing his actual specialty is adult film parodies. So he takes real movies and he does the comedic adult parody version. I don't know if he did Game of Thrones, but like Game of Thrones or like whatever, like you can think of, and then does a parody of it. I think he did one with puppets. That's like a Jim Henson. I don't know.
Wait, what's DuckDuckGo, Dwayne?
Private browser.
Oh, like an underground black market type.
It's not black market. Yeah, it's private. Just so people can't trace what Dwayne's looking at, I guess.
Oh, Rosie, so tell me how you got into comedy. Where did it all begin? Where did you feel like it became professional for you?
So I actually was really shy growing up. I never thought I would go into comedy. I was dating a guy who wanted to be a comedian. He was an amateur stand-up, and I used to go to his open mics and stuff. Basically, my story is the story of the fabulous Mrs. Maisel. I haven't seen the show, but every time I tell everyone my stand-up story, they're like, that's the fabulous Mrs. Maisel. I'm like, well, that's actually my life. But I was writing jokes for him. I would say, well, why don't you say it like this? Or why don't you say it like that? And I noticed that every time he did it the way I said, he would get a laugh. So he started like giving me a hard time. Like, oh, why don't you just write 5 minutes and do stand-up? You know, you might as well just do stand-up. I was also one of the girlfriends, like sometimes you go to a comedy show and there's like some like angry looking girl in the back who's there to support her comedian boyfriend. And she's like, when can I leave? That was me. I was like, when is this over? I hate comedy. And then he's like, well, you're such a drag. Why don't you just like write 5 minutes so you have something to talk about with the other comic? Because you're just sitting in the back with your arms crossed like a sourpuss. So I was too scared to do it because I was like, I'm not a comedian. And then about 6 months after we broke up, I kept thinking of jokes. Like I got bitten by the comedy bug and I didn't even know it. I kept writing material and thinking of material. And so I was like, well, maybe I will try stand up. And so I did it and I never looked back. So that's my story.
Does this guy still do comedy or did he quit?
I don't think he does. Yeah, I think he has quit. It's not some like famous guy that I'm like, oh, and I was like with this like famous comedian. No, he was just some like random.
And did this happen in LA or did it happen in Louisiana, New Orleans?
A little bit of both. We were together mostly in New Orleans and then we moved to LA. I was originally thinking of getting into screenwriting or something writing related, not stand-up, not performance. And then I think that's why I kept thinking of jokes because I'm a writer. And I believe he has moved back and he's not doing stand-up anymore, but this is a very long time ago, like another lifetime.
Rosie, I have to ask, being Asian American and being a woman, how has the scene changed for you? Like since 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whenever you started, what have you noticed?
So I basically can retire as a comedian because I already reached my life goal. My life goal, when I first started doing stand-up, one of the reasons I wanted to be in the entertainment industry, because I was in college, I was writing a letter or a paper for this scholarship, this Asian American scholarship. And I started doing research about Asian women. And this was the saddest statistic I ever saw, that there was a statistic that Asian women actually had the highest rate of suicide in America, not in Asia. And one of the reasons because there was little to no role models in entertainment for Asian women. And the role models that did exist were very negative stereotypes. And I have just seen the industry completely evolve and change. You know, when I started, there was me, Margaret Cho, Amy Anderson, who Dwayne knows, and maybe like 2 other Asian female comics. So there was a woman named Kate Riggs, Suzanne Wang, who has now passed away. And that was it. There was no Asian women in comedy at all. You know, Ali Wong hadn't started stand-up. There were so many successful and famous female Asian stand-up comedians that didn't even exist back then. So I was like really like out there by myself. And so now I've done shows with all Asian women. I work with a group called Crazy Woke Asians that has all like Asian American comics and a lot of Asian female stand-up comics. And so I never in 1,000 years imagined that this would happen. And I just wanted to be a positive role model for Asian women, just so that statistic could be, you know, null and void, because it was so depressing to read that. And now it's just crazy. You know, we're having an Asian renaissance in the entertainment industry, from Netflix casting Asian women as leading characters to, you know, you can just Google Asian female stand-up comic and there's like hundreds of them. So I feel like I've reached my goal in life.
All right, what do you guys think? Should we get into it?
Yep, let's do it.
Word.
One of the things we all watched to give us some deep background on the subject was the actual audio of Betty and Barney Hill's hypnosis sessions. We highly recommend you watch it, and we're going to put a link in the show notes. All right, here are the facts.
Barney Hill, who was African American, worked the night shift at the post office. And Betty, who is Caucasian, was a social worker who handled child welfare cases. Barney and Betty, they were a biracial couple before it was cool to be biracial. Okay, so in their free time, they went to church and they did civil rights work. And both of them were actually members of the NAACP.
And in September 1961, Betty and Barney decided to go on an impromptu honeymoon to Niagara Falls through Montreal. On their way home, close to midnight, September 19th, 20th, through New Hampshire's White Mountains, they realized that a strange light was following them.
They were going through the White Mountains.
I know, I was thinking that too.
What were you thinking about, Rosie?
I was just thinking what was following them in the White Mountains. I don't know. I'm traumatized by that name.
Did they only travel at midnight just to like avoid looks and avoid people giving them crap? You know what I mean?
Or were they traveling at night because he's African American and it's dark at night?
Is this a metaphor? It's like like Middle Earth, right?
So this light was following him. At first, Barney wasn't concerned. He was a World War II vet and a plane enthusiast, so he assumed because of the late hour, it couldn't be a plane or a helicopter. He figured it was a satellite that had gone off course, which is really crazy to think it was a satellite. But anyway, then they pulled over and looked through a pair of binoculars.
Why did he have binoculars with him? That's kind of weird.
Thought that too. That is really...
I'm like, why would you have binoculars with you?
Maybe it was a thing people had back in the day. They were going through scenic places and they probably went to, they went to the waterfall. I don't know. I can only imagine to see things far away, but it's almost like they knew something was going to go down, right?
I don't know. Binoculars was like a red flag for me.
What were you thinking he was doing with the binoculars, Rosie?
I have no idea. It just was a red flag. Like, I don't carry binoculars around.
And he looked through the binoculars and saw there was this spinning object. And maybe the aliens thought that he would not have binoculars either.
Well, what's weird about this whole thing is if I saw something following me in the night sky, the first thought I would have is alien. What would you guys think would be following you guys if something was in the air and you're driving late at night?
I would think cop. First.
I know, me too. Like biracial couple in 1961. All right, let's pull over, babe.
Jennifer, what would you think was behind you?
That's what I would think. Yes, I'm in trouble. Someone is following me, some kind of military SWAT.
You got to pull over and let her get in the back seat. I wonder if she was in the back seat. That'd be a way to make that work, right? Like driving Miss Daisy, but I'm also boning Miss Daisy.
You know what's really weird about this whole spinning object to me is that the perception of UFO crafts changes based on our own technology. So like in the 60s and before, it was these circular objects. Sometime in the 80s and 90s, it becomes like these triangles that look more like the stealth fighter kind of thing. Even like aliens itself, like before this book called Communion by Whitley Strieber came out, everyone saw different kinds of aliens. And really, once Communion came out with this gray alien on the cover, everyone saw them as gray aliens. So I wonder how much popular fiction and played a factor in how people perceive these objects.
Right. It's like if you watch Law and Order, they bring someone in to look at a lineup, but they see that person in the hallway. It's tainted because he saw them in the hallway first. So it might be in their subconscious.
70 miles later, with the lights still following them, Barney gets out of the car with a gun and attempted to confront the object. That's a very Southern thing to do, by the way.
I know. I don't know if he's from New Hampshire, but the fact that he got out with a gun, that part I was like, all right, he's in New Hampshire. So he's basically saying, I'm about to shoot a white dude. You know what I mean? That's pretty bold in 1961. It really is.
But then he saw uniformed gray beings behind the windows. He attempted to shoot them, but a voice in his head didn't allow him to. I wonder if he's heard that voice before.
It was called Don't Shoot the Cops.
That voice was systemic racism. Nah.
Or maybe critical race theory. He's hearing critical race theory.
Right.
So instead, he ran back to his car and they tried to get away. They woke up 2 hours later and 35 miles away from where they last remembered and drove home. Have you guys ever had missing time?
Only when my blood sugar's low and I take a nap.
But then you're taking a nap, so we know.
And then I wake up, I'm like, where am I? Can I get a Snickers?
A little when I lived in Boston, a little, but only when I would drive at night sleepy. I used to do that. I don't do it anymore, but like, thank God I'm alive. In a parallel universe, I may not be alive. I used to drive sleepy. I worked full time. I was doing comedy.
Crazy, Dwayne.
Yeah. Sometimes I would get in my driveway and I would just be like, I don't know how I got here.
Jennifer, do you have missing time?
Every day.
Every day.
Like, why did that take so long? Wait, it's already 6 p.m. Like,
actually, Dwayne, I think you're right. Missing time happens a lot when people drive. Like a lot of times people get missing time if they drive to the same place to work every day. They'll space out and they'll be like, oh my God, I'm at work.
Space out.
No pun intended.
Okay, and so another little fact is supposedly the front of Barney's shoes were scuffed, his back and his neck were sore, and Betty's dress was ripped, and there was even like pink powder on it at one point, and also both of their watches supposedly never worked again, which is really coincidental, or yes, caused by aliens.
The battery died.
The battery died at the same time.
So the other thing is, in the following week and months, Betty had nightmares and Barney was suffering from anxiety.
What if Betty's nightmares was that she realized what it was like to be African American in America in the 1960s?
Right.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, fuck, I didn't realize this is terrible.
Especially in New Hampshire. Even though New Hampshire's like a liberal place, but still,
they're in the White Mountains, Dwayne.
Right, exactly.
Oh, yes. Oh, and also they underwent hypnosis, which is like a really important part of this case. And they discovered the rest that had happened, particularly in those missing 2 hours.
That whole thing is crazy because I've listened to the tapes, some of them, and it's very much like Get Out. It's like, this guy has their minds under control. And I didn't know that was a thing in 61. So it's really interesting. And I think the watch is not working. To me, that's like a detail that makes it sound more true, because like our wimpy technology would just sort of fry under there in the presence of whatever they brought to the table. And they probably could bend time a bit.
This is the most shady part of the whole story. I mean, if they didn't have to go through hypnosis and they said that they were abducted, I think more people would believe them. But I think this is the point in the story. Everyone's like, wow, yeah, like maybe somebody implanted this. Maybe they're making up. Maybe something's going on. Because if you've heard the hypnosis session, I mean, I think Barney believes it. I mean, just the way he freaks out in those videos or in the tape.
Well, that's the thing. The panic in his voice, the way I read it, it comes from either this is a very traumatic memory that he wants to get away from, or it could come from dissonance, that his brain is being sort of invaded and he can't do anything about it. So it's either one of those two things. Like either he just doesn't like the fact that this guy has him under his control, but it does seem like it's a super traumatic thing. He's not acting for sure, hyperventilating. He's like, I need you to wake me up. And which is crazy because I've never been hypnotized really, but you ever that thing when you're like sleeping and you kind of wake up, but you can't move yet?
Yeah. Sleep paralysis. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had that. It's so scary. I've had it where like I thought I heard someone in the room and I was by myself and I literally, it's like, what's the movie Kill Bill? Like I had to just try to move a finger first because I couldn't get up. And I don't know if it was fear or just that middle sleep range. So it felt like that too. Like it wasn't like he was under and he was like luxuriating in it or relishing the moment. He was like, I need to get out of this. Like, wake me up, give me back. So that gave it some authenticity for me.
Have you guys ever been hypnotized?
I have.
What was it like?
I actually don't have a story. I actually get hypnotized every week.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I go to a hypnotherapist.
Have you been abducted by alien?
I haven't, no. So I went to a hypnotherapist when I was in my early 20s, and unfortunately she was horrible and didn't really do anything. It was just like a nice, relaxing situation where she would put me under and then like give me positive suggestions. I felt like she didn't really do anything, but I have an amazing hypnotherapist now, and he does like subconscious work with me. So it's like half an hour of therapy and then half an hour of hypnosis. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like being in a sleep, but you're awake. It's actually like what you described, Dwayne, the sleep paralysis, but not horrifying. Because I've been in sleep paralysis too.
Can you capture memories that you probably wouldn't be able to capture when you were not in that state?
It's actually really crazy. He does go into my subconscious mind and he does do stuff. Yeah, memories and other work. The best way I would describe it is, yes, it's like that sleep paralysis, but not scary. And memories come up. There's been times that I've been totally normal, like not stressed or depressed or anything. And he puts me under and like pulls out like these crazy, like deep memories. And I like wake up crying and I'm like, whoa, I didn't think that was going to happen. So, I mean, there's been some crazy sessions that we had, but it's very, very helpful, more than I've had normal therapy and I didn't feel it was that helpful.
The ship landed on the car and put the Hills to sleep. They were then brought on board the ship where they were examined and hair and nail and skin samples were taken. One thing that stood out was that they were surprised when they found out that Barney's teeth were fake. So I guess the aliens didn't know about fake teeth. Their experience allegedly kicked off the ultra secret Project Blue Book, which was the government's attempt to look into UFO phenomenon. And now, like, the NSA has like a little fact sheet about the Project Blue Book. You know, I looked it up. I'm probably on some list now for looking it up, but it's a really interesting fact sheet. And it's like, of this many cases, only this many. And if you want information, call here. If you have a UFO to report, call here. It's very matter of fact, which is crazy.
Which part of the human body do you guys think the aliens would think is the weirdest part of our bodies?
Ears. Our ears are pretty weird if you like look at an ear.
I would say maybe elbow skin.
Oh yeah. Elbow skin's really weird.
They would look at it like as some sort of defect. Like clearly you have a little bit more skin than you need. And why is it all collected at the elbow?
And bumpy.
Right.
I was thinking just the hair on our bodies, you know, like pubic hair or just kind of random hair and how some people are more hairy than other people.
They would be like, walk. Look at this. What is this walk? Walk. Come here.
Their case was not the first time a human being has seen a UFO and or been abducted, but it was the first widely publicized case and became the standard way we look at abductions. Before Betty and Barney, alien abductions were often much more friendly experiences. In fact, they were often called space brothers and space sisters. So yeah, that's one of the things that I think is really important is that in the 1950s, what would happen is that they'd take these people and put them into space and often say things like, this is your world. This is Earth. This is the only planet you have. And you guys are going to fuck it up by blowing each other up. And that was really the most common UFO experience. And the abductions were these really friendly things. And they're often done by Nordics. We had an episode earlier with these 6'7", white, angelic looking UFO aliens. But then the Betty and Barney Hill case really changed everything in the ufology world. This became the standard of basically every abduction after that. If you guys were abducted, do you guys want a pleasant experience or something totally unpleasant?
Pleasant.
Pleasant, because the other way, I may not live. Like I may just have a cardiac arrest right there, you know?
For me, I kind of want the unpleasant. It's just a better topic of conversation. I mean, imagine the Betty and Barney Hill conversation. I mean, you're just like, oh yeah. And then they took me to this spaceship and we had a great dinner with the white people and I saw Earth and More awesome is like I got an anal probe and I might have an alien half hybrid baby and they like tortured me and I somehow escaped. Like I somehow escaped. I think it's more awesome. It's all about stories at the dinner table with other people to me.
No, I want a Nordic god to have dinner with, like Alexander Skarsgård or something, to abduct me.
See, Koji, if you got abducted by aliens and it was friendly, that's still a great story. The only time it's not as great is if you're at a party with someone who was anally probed. Then everyone, but if he's not at the party, then your story is still killer, still tops.
It sometimes gets boring though. Oh, and then what happened? And you're just like, and then he brought me back to Earth. And then what happened?
I know, Koji, but you're discounting all the emotional and mental trauma that you would have.
That's a great point.
I don't know. I mean, I just think it'd be a great conversation, especially on a date, on a first date.
First date.
By the way, I've been probed.
Skeptics, in particular local to the area, believes that Betty and Barney had just misinterpreted an airplane beacon. And according to Wikipedia, because isn't that always the best source? Okay, we use a lot of Wikipedia here on the Unofficial Official Story. Psychiatrists later suggested that the supposed abduction was a hallucination brought on by the stress of being an interracial couple in the early 60s in the United States. So, these are professionals. They know how the brain works, and that's what they're thinking. All right. So Betty discounted this suggestion, noting that her relationship with Barney was totally good and happy, and that their interracial marriage caused no notable problems with their friends or family.
Isn't that what someone who was suffering from something like that would say?
Well, maybe, but here's the thing. It's not a dream if you have the same dream. Like if I woke up today and I was like, oh, what a crazy dream. I dreamt everyone had to stay home for a year and it was just like virus. You know what I mean? And then you all said, oh, I had that same dream. Then, clearly it wasn't a dream, right? So what I mean is, how could the stress bring on the same exact story? Because their stories line up pretty, unless, again, she told him or he told her. But it seems like if it was a stress-related thing, they would have experienced a totally different thing, each of them. Anyway, others believe it was sleep deprivation, which, we talked about earlier, and false memories implanted either intentionally or unintentionally during hypnosis, which I think that would be more likely if anything. So the question is, what really happened to Betty and Barney Hill?
Now that we have the facts, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll tell you what we think may have actually really happened. If you have an idea about what really happened or want us to discuss a topic, please visit us at unofficialofficialstory.com and let us know. If we like it, who knows, we might just ask you to come on the show with us. Now that we've discussed the facts, let's workshop our ideas.
I kind of had two. I'll go with the more wacky one, which is the government or some agency, either at the government's behest or maybe not. They're working on mind control, just sort of as another form of a weapon. It was easy to test on these two people because they were interracial, and it wouldn't be a thing that would have a lot of blowback on them. And I think they needed it to be a UFO thing. Like if you bring someone in to test them, immediately they know there's a test. So they had to stage it a bit. And they wanted to see if they could, one, control them through a series of light and just overwhelming them. And then later also take control of their mind. Like hypnosis was a thing. It was a popular thing at that time. And I think the whole thing was, can we hypnotize someone from far away? Can we take their minds? Can we insert things in their minds? Can we, you know what I mean? And I don't think it was a success. And I think what they wanted to do didn't happen. Whatever experience they wanted to implant in their head, it didn't quite work. But it is sort of the basis to taking over someone's mind. And I think Get Out is probably some sort of half true account of that. I think when Jordan Peele wrote it, he probably did his research, came across this thing and fictionalized it. But I think this was the early stages of taking over someone's mind. And it was basically a war weapon that they used on these people. And they were more than happy to blame it on UFOs. So people wouldn't know the government was trying to implant things in people's heads, create these false things. If you listen to their accounts, he says, I saw someone from far away. He looked like an Irishman. And he was like, why? He was like, he was friendly. And Irish people are usually not friendly to me. So they were using his own sort of preconceived experiences and preconceived notions and experiences just to try to bend his mind and test his mind as well.
He also mentioned that they were wearing uniforms.
Yeah, they both mentioned they were wearing uniforms as well. Yes.
Government uniforms.
I mean, my other theory was that they were aliens, but I'm going to go with this one.
It's funny that Jennifer was reading about the Wikipedia, because that was actually my original theory, was that it was the stress of being an interracial couple. And I didn't realize it was actually something that people had said. That's why I wanted to include it in the facts. My thing was that Betty married Barney because she wanted to get a rise out of people. She's one of those people that just loves having stories like me. She just wants to talk to people, and she thought everyone's going to freak out if I marry this African-American dude. And everyone's going to think that like I'm either the coolest person or the craziest person, or stop talking to me because they're racist.
Right.
But that whole experience did not get the rise out of people that she had hoped.
They're like, Barney's cool. We like him.
Yeah, we like Barney. He's like a normal dude. So then she's like, well, what can we do that will get people to talk about us, talk about what we do, you know? And so when they're going through the White Mountains, they kind of had a conversation. They started talking to each other. You know, what if we told people aliens abducted us? And they started then through the whole trip, they started telling each other all the details and started getting into it. You know, when you're on a long road trip, you have a lot of time. So they started working out all the different stories and facts and all the different things, like the watch is not working. They broke their watches at the same time, so they stopped working. And they said that they're missing time and all of that good stuff. So there were no aliens. I believe in aliens, but there were no aliens in this case. This was Betty really just wanting people to talk about her. And one of my facts that I'll give to really slam this one home is that, you know, she talked later about how many times she's seen aliens. In some of the research, she said she'd seen aliens like 100 times or something. And that just screams that she wanted people to talk about her. And
Right. We know it's interesting too. What I like about that theory, Koji, is Koji and I, first thing we ever did, hasn't been made yet, but we wrote a movie called Love Bait based on a joke I had. And it's a movie where this African-American guy can hire him to scare your parents. Because they'll accept the guy that you're dating. And it was based on a joke I had where it's like, if you're a Korean woman and you fall in love with a Japanese man and your parents won't accept him, bring home a black guy. And then 2 weeks later, bring the Japanese guy back home. As the joke progresses, I go, what if you fall in love with a black guy, then bring home Flavor Flav, right? And then I go, what if you fall in love with Flavor Flav, then bring home an alien? You know what I mean? And no disrespect to Flavor Flav. You know, I don't know him, but that's my man, 40 grand. If I felt he would be my man, 40 grand. So anyway, there's also a component, Koji, of like, maybe they just wanted to get the heat off of them. You know, like people were looking at them. People thought they were weird. She was like, what if we concoct an alien story? Then people can shift their focus to the aliens being weird and not us. You know, or it could be the attention angle too. She just wanted attention, but there is a little bit of that there too. Like, that's what you should be fearful of, not us, you know?
can I just say, I really wanted her to be abducted, or them abducted by aliens. I mean, I thought long and hard about trying to come up with a theory to explain it, but I kept coming back to this one. Jennifer, what's your theory?
It's basically, this was the ultimate PR stunt for Betty and Barney. And they originally were going to use this as a stunt to support their civil rights beliefs and like sort of do a 1960s BLM. And they decided to do this while they were on their belated honeymoon vacation here. And then it just got carried away and they ended up having so much fun and getting so much attention for this alien abduction story that they created, which was supposed to be a PR stunt, help the civil rights movement at the time. And they never got back to their original plan. It was like, basically they were going to use their platform further something of good. And so instead they just kind of were on this runaway train of like, okay, well, we're just going to be the ultimate alien abductees.
So wait, they were originally, was it supposed to be alien abductions, or was it supposed to be like a government abduction because they're an interracial couple, or was it something?
I think it was going to add that they were going to come up with this alien abduction story and, you know, talk about it. And so what I'm saying is the hypnosis, they like totally faked it, that they were acting.
Well, what I love about all three of us is that we all went with, this is a fake story. So Dwayne, since you mentioned that you have an alien one, let's hear your alien theory, because I really want to hear an alien theory and really want to believe it.
I think his alien theory was just that they're abducted, right?
But it's also, they were targeted because they were an interracial couple. So the aliens, they looked at them as sort of like a bit progressive. And so they were like, let's study the progressive of the society.
I love it. Yes.
Or it could have been because they were driving in the middle of the White Mountains and that's where the aliens were. And they were like, oh, these are the only people we have to abduct.
Right, absolutely.
There's no one else around.
Wait, so why would the aliens want a progressive people?
Well, they probably had a message that was progressive.
So let's put something up their butt.
You're going to be down.
Right. They're okay with butt stuff. Yeah.
I was totally mixed. I felt like it wasn't real, but then the hypnosis made me convinced it was real. But then the fact that, like you said, Koji, she kept seeing other aliens. You're like, okay, you're a crazy lady. So I felt like I was totally mixed. I'm surprised you guys have such a passionate stance. I'm totally, completely torn down the middle. Like, what happened?
No, I am too, actually. I am too. What's kind of like with her seeing other aliens, it's kind of like if I bought a Mazda tomorrow, I would suddenly see all these Mazdas on the road, you know what I mean? That I didn't notice before.
I totally felt like, yeah, it was just, they got pulled over by the cops and they got traumatized and they were stressed from their jobs and everything that happened. Maybe something sinister happened with the cops, but then when they had those dreams and they were matching and the hypnosis and it was matching and they were interviewed separately, that's when I started to question, like maybe they did get abducted.
Yeah, maybe. And yeah, he died in 1969. So he died kind of young. He was a little bit younger than her too, maybe like 3 years, maybe.
We're at that point in the show where we have to decide which of the stories becomes the official story forever. Rosie, since you're our guest, we would love to get your take on what is the official story going to be.
I am still so torn on this. I don't know. All three of your stories have melded together in my mind right now. I'm having a hard time. The mind control is happening on me. I think it was a publicity stunt. I don't necessarily know if it was for their interracial NAACP work, but I think that would be the most logical. However, I don't know if it was a lie that got away or if they were just under a lot of stress because they did have stressful jobs. They were an interracial couple in 1961, and they also were driving in the middle of the night. There's so many factors that affected it. So I do think it was a publicity stunt gone wrong. The only thing that is the shred of evidence that completely takes me off guard is the fact that they had a special unit of the government that went to investigate that is a UFO. That was the one thing that I don't think anyone has talked about, actually. That section of the military that was assigned, that had interviewed them. This was in the reading materials, that interviewed them and said it was a credible UFO sighting from what they said. So that kind of makes me like question marks.
Absolutely. And some guy from the Air Force went to their church, which is how they got to that agency was through this guy at their church, which makes it seem like they were targeted too, either by aliens or by the government. Like, how many people have Air Force captains in their church? I don't know. Maybe it's very common, but it seems like a very like neat kind of situation, you know?
Exactly. So that was making me kind of nervous. Like, why was there an Air Force guy? Why was there like a special department in the government and the military that was sent to investigate and said it was credible? So I'm officially torn.
And that is the official story. We'll take another break, and when we return, we'll be doing some improv.
We're a few shows into our podcast, and we could really use your help. If everyone listening can tell just one friend about this podcast and force them to subscribe, it would really help us continue to grow.
Okay, this month we're going to be doing a little improv. We're each going to take a role and flesh out the story.
We've decided that we're going to do the moment right as they're being stopped. And we've cast it already. So Rosie's going to be Barney Hill, of course.
I can't take my teeth out, though.
And Dwayne's going to be Betty Hill, of course. And Jennifer is the person from the government who is currently stopping them. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Scene.
Oh, my God. I think that's a light behind me, babe.
Oh, Bonnie, why do these people Bonnie, be careful.
Should we switch seats? Do you want to drive?
No, Bonnie, pull over, Bonnie. I'll get in the back.
Okay, good idea.
Oh, Bonnie, they're here, Bonnie. What are we getting? Bonnie.
Yes, officer.
Step out of the vehicle.
Oh my God, this has got to be an alien. Why am I being pulled over? I didn't do anything wrong.
Put your hands behind your head.
Typical.
Oh, Bonnie, if you get out, I'm going to get out too. I don't want anything to happen to you, Bonnie. I'm going to get out with you.
Ma'am, do you have any identification?
Yeah. My purse. This is my driver. He's not my husband. He's my driver.
I'm totally her driver.
Ma'am.
I'm sorry, Bonnie. I'm sorry.
Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you're okay?
Oh, yeah. He wouldn't hurt a fly.
I'm her driver.
No, unless that fly overcooked the steak. But other than that.
May I ask why both of you are driving at 2 a.m? Where are you coming from?
I'm not, answer. Come on, babe. I'm not going to.
I had my driver here take me to Montreal. I just wanted to see it.
All right. You guys are free to go.
Have a good night, ma'am, sir.
Bonnie, that was crazy.
I know.
Did you see those aliens?
I know. This is great because we can go back and tell everyone what happened and how corrupt the cops are. This is what I've been trying to say.
Yeah. Or we can just say they were aliens.
Why would we say they're aliens, babe? That doesn't make any sense. They were obviously racist cops that were just pulling me over for no reason. I'm just driving my beautiful wife.
Because, Bonnie, they're going to be racist cops even after.
That's a good point.
At least with aliens, we get a story out of it.
Okay, well, we got to make it an elaborate story. We can't just say aliens pulled us over. That doesn't make any sense. We got to come up with they probed me, they poked me.
I got you. I'm doing a drawing right now.
We came from a 12th star. Your dress got torn. We need drama, babe.
Oh, this is great.
And scene. Great job, guys. One of the podcasts we're listening to and think you should be listening to as well is Ghost Gaze, a hauntingly gay podcast. They are two best friends who love the paranormal. They research locations, visit haunted houses, and talk with some very lovely people about their experiences. Find them wherever you get your podcasts from.
Rosie, thank you for coming on the show. All right, so how can people follow you? What are you working on? What do you have coming up?
Thank you, Jennifer, so much for having me. And you guys have been awesome. It was so fun. You guys can find me on Twitter at Funny Rosie. I'm on Facebook at Funny Rosie, Instagram Out of the Box Rosie. And of course, my podcast is Out of the Box Podcast with Rosie Tran. If you guys want to check me out, I am on all the platforms and I have all my podcasts and everything. And I'm really easy. I'm the only Rosie Tran comedian.
And thank you all so much for listening. There are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and we're honored you've chosen ours to listen to.
Please check out our website, unofficialofficialstory.com, for our show notes or to hear our past episodes.
All right, guys, be sure to come back next month where we will be answering the question, what happened to D.B. Cooper?
He jumped out of a plane.
Yeah, got away.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.